Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Back with my favourite Crystal Palace fan, Dan, or better known as HT Hopkins looking to curl one. There you go. I always get the abbreviation wrong. Hopkins looking to curl one. Anyway, his YouTube channel is in the link below if you want to go check it down out and get more content. You might have seen him recently on the Overlap as well, discussing Crystal Palace's transfer window, and that's where I wanted to start, Dan. What's it like being a Palace fan this week? Andersen's off, Gay might be off, and as a neutral, there's not much happening. A lot of rumours with players to Crystal Palace, but nothing concrete just yet.
Yeah, it's certainly a busy time. Obviously, every club wants to be relatively busy at the end of a transfer window, but sometimes it's not as straightforward as that. I think, and it's something I said on the Overlap earlier this week, the Joachim Andersen deal is one, if you look at it from a purely financial point of view, makes a great deal of sense. He's 28 years old now. We signed him from Lyon 3 years ago at 25 for 15 million there or thereabouts, because obviously the fee was in euros. We're looking at getting 30. I think the actual breakdown of it is about 27 up front and 3 added on. And if we were to keep him, the contract that has been offered to him by Fulham is well above what he is currently on at Crystal Palace. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but he's already a pretty high earner. So for us to keep hold of him, you'd be looking at matching that wage, probably on a long-term contract. And as everyone knows, you get a defender, say 30 or 31 years old in 2 or 3 years' time, and their resale value goes through the floor. So I don't necessarily blame the club for this. I think we, in previous transfer windows and previous years, have been a club who've fallen foul of keeping hold of players too long rather than selling at their optimum value. But of course, it's a difficult thing to get past the fans optics-wise, because the season has started and it's been such a key part of our first team for the last 3 years. It looks like Julen Lopetegui's heading off to Leicester. Once again, he is turning 33 in September. We paid £2.5 million for him in the summer of 2019. So to get £8 million overall for someone who's very much in the autumn of his career, again, it's over 3 times the amount we paid. I can't have a problem with that. And even in relation to Mark Gay, I don't imagine that he will actually end up leaving. I think a lot of the noise in relation to this transfer is coming from journalists who have been briefed from Newcastle's side of things rather than Crystal Palace's. The reality, as far as I see it this morning, is that they are still some £5 to £7 million under the initial asking price. And that asking price hasn't changed since the story first cropped up about 4 weeks ago. So I would imagine, with the season having kicked off, with our first game against Brentford not having gone as we planned, and West Ham coming up tomorrow, I just don't see that Crystal Palace are going to sell. I mean, if we do, it should be said, it's £70 million, which would be our record sale by some 20. Obviously, you tack that on to Michael Olise going for 50 earlier in the window, to Andersen for 30, to potentially Jordan Ayew for 8, and Sam Johnston as well, because he has made it clear that he doesn't want to play second fiddle to Dean Henderson. That is a lot of money coming into the club in a very short space of time. But of course, every other selling club that we're going to look to try and get replacements with will know that we are armed with, very deep pockets all of a sudden, and they will probably put £5 to £7 million on every single reasonable valuation. So it's a very stressful time, but there's probably going to be a fair bit of movement, whatever happens, regardless of Mark Gay and whether or not he ends up going to Newcastle.
You seem quite optimistic. So if come the end of the window in terms of sales, obviously Elise is gone and Andersen joins Fulham, Ayew goes, and let's just say Johnson goes. However, you keep hold of Eze and Gay. Are you looking at that as a success that you've retained those two? And I think it's fair to put Wharton in that bracket as well. Are you looking at thinking, well, do you know what? We've still got arguably 3 of our 5 best players at the club. And obviously you'd assume you'd have a couple of signings as well. So you seem quite positive.
Yeah, I'm pretty philosophical. I think I don't necessarily blame the media as a whole for this narrative that there's some sort of fire sale going on. As things currently stand, we've allowed Michael Olise, who, let's be real, is one of the best wingers in world football at this point, to go to a super club in Bayern Munich with a release clause that was already there in his deal. There was nothing we could do about that. Iberi Eze's release clause has come and gone. He won't be leaving unless something absolutely ridiculous comes across our desk. I just don't see that. You've still got Dean Andersen, who was the number 1 at the back end of last year. Still got as of right now, Mark Gay, Chaddy Riyad, Chris Richards in the centre-back roles. You've still got Tyreek Mitchell, Munoz, Chet Decore, Adam Walton, John Philippe Mateta. There's quality. And there will be, even without, the departure of Mark Gay, at least one centre-back coming in. You would assume a left wing-back as backup to Tyreek Mitchell or competition. Probably another attacking body. There's been links with Carney Chukwuemeka, who obviously is at Chelsea at the moment. There's all sorts of chaos going on there. And we know that in terms of leverage towards the end of the window, we've got a fair bit over Chelsea because of their need to shift players out from FFP and PSR reg situations. So I think business will get done. And you have to bear in mind as well, people are saying we're letting Oliver Glasner down because of these players leaving. He will have been acutely aware that Michael Olise was likely to leave when the window opened because of the existence of this release clause. I think even with Joachim Andersen, he doesn't necessarily fit the style of football that Oliver Glasner wants to play. He's not particularly quick. We play with a central trio. He wants players in the defensive line to push up and sort of join the midfield sporadically to create overloads in the middle of the park and try and get us back on the front foot. Andersen's more of a cultured, long ball playing, not necessarily a sit-back defender, but someone that's going to be there in the heart of the back three. Whereas someone like Maxence Lacroix, who we've been linked with, who he's previously worked with at Wolfsburg, I think he fits what Oliver Glasner wants in terms of a defensive profile a little bit better, and probably will come for a fee that is less than the one we're getting for Joachim Andersen. So it's not just a case of we're going to sell these players and get nobody in. If anything, we're going to sell them and get players in at better age profiles with more resale value who suit Oliver Glasner's tactical plan better, or at least that is the blueprint that we are going down.
Yeah, Palace is the one to keep their eye on for the last week of the transfer window. I think your recruitment over the last couple of seasons has been quite smart as well, bringing in young players. Even in the January transfer window, I think you made the best signing of the transfer window with Wharton too. So I think you can have a lot of confidence in what you're going to do in terms of spending money. I think as a neutral, you don't really want to see clubs in and around the mid-table bracket having to sell players where it feels like the ones at the top of the table are just constantly purchasing. They're not too worried about FFP as the rest of us are. But I certainly think you'll do some good business as well. And I'm intrigued just to see who you get in. Now, obviously, the next question is going to be tricky because your opinion may change in the next week depending on incomings and outgoings. However, what are your expectations for Crystal Palace this season?
I think, you look at the back end of last season, Oliver Glasner came in. He'd never taken on a job mid-season before. He's always been a manager that wants to get his feet under the table with a tactical ideology across a full summer. But of course, the impact that he had on the team was magnificent. I think we won 6 of our last 7, put 4 past United, put 5 past Villa, played scored 5 at Selhurst, and it was chaos for the first 20 minutes of that game. So, there's a risk that the sort of snowball effect of momentum could have got a bit out of hand. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't be a top half side. I do think that the departure of Michael Olise is a huge one. Plenty of people, both in and outside the Crystal Palace bubble, have said we haven't replaced him adequately. For me, it's an impossible task. It would be like PSG trying to directly replace Kylian Mbappe. What Michael brought to the team was the ability, with a click of his fingers, to win a game, score a goal, do something completely out of this world, which is why he's joined such a sizable club in Bayern Munich. So to try and replicate that like for like would have been a fool's errand. I think Daichi Kamada is a very interesting signing on a free because of his previous experience with Oliver Glasner and working as a sort of dual number 10 with Abir Eze. I think Ismail Assar is a player that we've been after for a number of years. Dougie Friedman's been a big fan of his since he was at Watford. Obviously, he's gone around the different divisions. He was at Marseille before he moved to Crystal Palace, but that's quite an intelligent pickup. And I do think that we will refresh the squad in a way that, as I just said, is more suited to Oliver Glasner's style of football. And you would hope that a top 10 finish is there. I think if Michael Olise had stayed, then Europe becomes a more realistic prospect. But even with John Philippe Mateta, he scored 13 in 13 last season. Even if his game is perfectly suited to Oliver Glasner, you cannot expect a goal a game out of him. You just can't, because then he'd be up there with your Erling Haalands and your Mo Salahs, and it's just not going to be the case. So we have to expect a degree of drop-off. But, you've got Adam Walton for a full season. We've got Chet Decore back, who hasn't kicked a ball until Sunday against Brentford. in the Premier League under Crystal Palace, and indeed next to Adam Walton at the base of that midfield. Hopefully, Ayew grasps the nettle with Michael's departure, and hopefully the new bodies we get in across this upcoming week can really help us to kick on. And yeah, I would say base level 12th as an ambition, but if really outlandish about it, maybe 7th or 8th. But at the same time, that's me being quite fanciful with it rather than realistic.
I think that's a very fair expectation and sort of optimistic prediction as well. I've seen many people sort of predicting the same thing for Crystal Palace this season, and I'm included in that bracket as well. I can't recall exactly where I put you, but it was 10th or 11th or something, right. Well away from relegation, and with a bit of luck and a good run knocking on the door of an outside chance of European football. But I think that's fair to expect. However, I think the entertainment factor is something that's there at Palace, which can't be measured in terms of results, fan happiness, fan excitement. I think that's something that Palace had been lacking until Glasner rocked up. So I think I enjoy watching you under Glasner, and I'm looking forward to watching you again after this weekend. But going back to last weekend, obviously a defeat to Brentford, but what did you make of that performance from your side?
Well, it was a tricky one to sort of sum up because, I mean, I'm not sure if you watched it or saw the extended highlights or if your viewers did. You know, we've scored a perfectly good free kick 20 minutes in. It's a travesty, really. The referee, Sam Barrett, actually went into Oliver Glasner and Ayew and apologised because he blew his whistle and said he shouldn't have done because his initial thought was that WHUFC had committed a foul in the box. The actual replay shows there is no foul, and if anything, it's probably a foul on WHUFC. I'm not sure there even is that, but certainly if you look at the flight of the ball, you look at where the goalkeeper was looking, you know, it's completely irrelevant to the situation. And I think had VAR actually looked at it, they would have given it, but they couldn't because the ball was dead as a consequence of this whistle blowing. There was confusion in the ground, obviously a sense of indignation from our players. Brentford got up the other end. They scored to go 1-0 up within 2 minutes. You know, that is a momentum shift on the opening day of the season because the first 20 minutes we were all over it. You know, I spoke to a fair few Brentford fans and said we could have been 2 or 3-0 down by the time that free kick went in. We managed to get ourselves back to level, scored an offside goal that was marginal. You know, you're looking at probably 2 or 3 inches that Odsonne Edouard strayed beyond the line. So, you know, that could easily have turned into a come-from-behind victory on the first day away from home against a solid side in Brentford. You know, it's not as if they're relegation candidates straight off the bat. But, of course, you know, you concede late on and it heaps on a sense of misery where, you know, it's a flap of a butterfly's wings in many ways. You can't guarantee it, but the style of football that Oliver Glasner has implemented very much is benefited when you score the first goal because you exploit those gaps and those spaces, and then you have teams come onto you and try and, you know, create a problem, and then you pick off those gaps. It's happened numerous times. It happened last season away at Wolves where we scored first and went on to win that game 3-1. So you can't say for sure, but certainly had that even in the initial free kick stood, we could have come away with 3 points and felt very different going into this game tomorrow against yourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you played well against Brentford, to be honest with you. I think you were the better side, ultimately, over the course of 90 minutes. And, yeah, the referee blowing his whistle was, you know, like, there's always a lot of talk around VAR. And you just think, just don't cause headlines until you're going to eventually, just on the first weekend, just get everything right. Don't call it and bang, 20 minutes into your game, and there it is, a massive talking point already. And it's just a bit.
I said it the other day, you know, with the offside calls, they intentionally keep their flags down because they don't want to rule out a goal. He's blown his whistle in 0.4 seconds when the ball's left at the Arey's foot. If you just leave that for VAR to deal with, you still reach the right conclusion, but you don't have this situation where the ball's dead. You know, I'm not someone that's going to go, oh, there's some giant conspiracy theory. It's just referees making mistakes. But it's admirable that he came out and said sorry. But of course, you get nothing for that. You know, it's not as though you can replay the game. So it almost is a double hit, really, because you're more frustrated about the fact that you could have gone on and won it. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right, for West Ham fans that didn't see last weekend or didn't see much of Palace over pre-season, well, we should have done. We played you, including a secret game. We didn't get to see that one, though. But for West Ham fans unaware of some of the Palace players, who should we be keeping an eye out for on Saturday afternoon?
Well, I think I saw a picture from training that was put up today. Mark Gay is still on the training pitch. So it looks as though he will be in the 11. Obviously, Joachim Andersen is slightly different because I believe that deal with Fulham is very much advanced now, so he probably won't. You will see Chris Richards start next to Mark, I would imagine. Potentially Chadi Riyad, who's come in from Real Betis over the summer, former Barcelona youth player and very highly rated Moroccan international, big lad, and should get his Premier League debut there. Tariq Mitchell on the left, Daniel Munoz on the right. I would imagine Adam Walton will definitely start at the base of the midfield. We're not 100% sure yet whether Chet Doucouré is back to what you would consider full match fitness, because he had this long injury layoff at the back end of last season from November. WHUFC started next to Adam Walton at the base of the midfield against Brentford and did a solid enough job. You then have the two number 10s of Daichi Kamada and Abir Eze sort of sitting behind John Philippe Mateta. I'm not sure if that's how he will set up going into this game, because obviously you're looking at one game in the season. He may tweak it slightly given the fact that we're at home rather than away. But that's how we lined up against Brentford, and that's how I would expect largely the 11 to look going into this game tomorrow.
Right, from your team to my team, what do you make of West Ham?
Well, it's a difficult one to grasp, because obviously the last time I came on, we were talking about David Moyes and the sort of parallels in terms of fan opinion with Moyes and Hodgson, and how, you know, neutrals would be saying to you, careful what you wish for. I don't want to go one way or the other yet, I don't think, on West Ham, because, and someone said it on social media, and I make them right, the window looks on paper to have been a positive one for you, but we've seen that from West Ham previously, where you see a load of players come in and you think, oh, they could really kick on, and it doesn't quite mesh in the fashion you expect it to. I think Somerville is a very good pickup. Obviously, Fulkrug, proven goal scorer at, you know, recent international level. You look at the players that are already there, Bowen, Paqueta, you've got quality. There's no doubt about it. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we have a vested interest in him because he came through our academy. We know that one-on-one defensively, he's up there with the best in the league. It may not be that you would class him as your archetypal modern right wing back, but I think in that system, he could be a huge asset for you. And it's interesting because, of course, he's going to be coming up against the Abir Eze most likely if he starts tomorrow. Who will get the better of that particular battle? I mean, it's difficult. We've seen him graduate to a point where he was a first-team starter at Crystal Palace because he was dealing with Wilfried Zaha every single day in training when he was in his prime. So quite clearly, he has had solid schooling in dealing with tricky wingers. And I would imagine it'll be a pretty solid battle again. But yeah, I'm not really one way or the other yet. I think you could easily finish 7th or 8th, but at the same time, if things don't get off to a positive start for Lopetegui, it could go sour quite quickly. You know, I think if you're sitting there in, say, 11th or 12th in January, people are going to be wondering what it was all for. And that in itself may feed into a situation where Lopetegui wonders if he's the right man for it, because we've seen it at Wolves. You know, he walked out there when he didn't feel the situation was right for him. Admittedly, that was a financial call because of the restraints on Wolves' business, and you've backed him here, so that shouldn't be the case. But I don't know, I get the feeling he could be quite volatile, particularly if the fans get on his back and results don't pick up, because obviously you lost on that first day, and if you lose at Selhurst, all of a sudden, you know, the Goldfish Bowl existence starts to magnify.
A very fair observation. Right, let's turn our attention back to Selhurst Park then. How do you see this one going on Saturday?
I think we could easily win this 2 or 3-1. You know, I don't think that's outlandish from our point of view. We've mentioned it already. Our performance against Brentford was solid despite the fact that we'd lost. First home game, you know, as much as there is uncertainty over certain players, I think there will be desire amongst those that are picked to bounce back from that performance and result, because they want to see a solid result for their efforts. At the same time, you know, I mentioned it a minute ago, I think the first goal will probably be key in this game. If we manage to get in front early, like we did last time we met you at Selhurst, it could be an opening of the floodgates. If you manage to sucker punch us and score early on, then we'll be set into the same pattern as we were before, trying to establish a foothold in the game. And that may well lead to holes that you would exploit better than Brentford actually did. So I would probably say a score draw is most likely. I know that might sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but I think both sides, having lost on the first day, are going to want to get something on the board, and it may well result in not a degree of stalemate towards the end, but an acceptance of a solid point all round if it's, say, 1-1 or 2-2.
Don't worry, Dan, I'm on the fence as well. I've gone 1-1 for this game. We've got a prediction competition on our Patreon, and we've had over 100 people enter it for this week, and it's a right mixed bag of predictions, actually. They can usually be quite optimistic, unless we play like City or Liverpool or something, because there's a sign shirt up for grabs. People are trying to get it right. You put your biased West Ham claret and blue specs to one side here. There's a signed shirt up for grabs. I'm picking what I think is going to happen. And there's a lot going for Palace, just as much as there is going for West Ham. And then there's plenty down the middle, like myself and you. It's difficult. We've only got one game per team to go on. So
you can't really judge it until about 5 or 6 games in.
We both got beat on the opening day as well. So it's there's not really enough evidence to formulate a prediction. I just like it. I think it's a bit of fun. Yeah, but anyway,
it's good.
Dan, thank you so much. Pleasure as always. If you guys at home have enjoyed Dan's views, please do check out his YouTube channel. I'll put the links to his social media, YouTube and Patreon in the description below. Go check them out. If you enjoyed this video, though, please do drop a like on it. Subscribe to Hammers Chat. And myself and Dan, well, we'll catch you up for the return fixture at the London Stadium in a few months' time. We'll see you then.
Cheers.